David, welcome to the Grown Gets Real podcast. I am super excited to have you on here to dive into a little bit of value graphics. I can't wait for the listeners to be all educated and walk away with the insights that you're going to, share and drop on us today.
Well, I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for having me over. Nice place you got here. Love it.
Thank you.
And let's have a great conversation.
Let's do this. Don't make it awkward, David. Don't make it awkward. Well, provide the audience a little bit of context of high level. Who are you? What's your area of expertise before we dive into like the nuts and bolts of it?
Sure. So I had a marketing firm for a decade and a half. And then sold that to management and started looking into some things that were kind of feeling wacky and weird to me about the marketing world. And that led me to what I do now. I'm the founder of the Valuegraphics project. I'm a human values, someone called me a human values activist, and I kind of like that.
I could see that after having a conversation with you. Absolutely.
And a speaker and an author, and I'm really, really blessed. I get to run around the world and talk to people about what really matters to all of us, no matter what we do, which is what our core human values are.
Absolutely. Well, so let's dive into what is value graphics? Help us define that.
Okay. So the best way to define it, because it's a word that, first off, here's the thing that everybody does when they think about this word. They think it's two words, value graphics, which makes me sound like a sign maker or a inexpensive graphic designer. And that's not the case. It's one word. It's value graphics. And it's just like demographics and psychographics. So maybe if we talk about the three of them as a set, it'll help everybody kind of get their head around this. Okay. So I think about it as like a three-legged stool. It's a three-legged stool of audience insights, because we're all, after all, trying to figure out our audiences and how we can get people to make a decision that we'd like them to make. So to do that, you need to be standing on a sturdy three-legged stool. The first leg is demographics. Mm-hmm. We all know what those are: gender, income, marital status, number of kids, income, blah, 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 all that stuff. And it's important because you got to put a fence around a group of people, and you got to understand, sometimes you're selling reading glasses and that's not going to sell to 18-year-olds because there's a certain demographic reality around the people who are going to buy a pair of reading glasses.
Yeah.
But the problem with demographics is we've been also thinking that they tell us who people are, not just what they are. And that's a big distinction. So understanding what people are, demographics are amazing at that. They're the best tool in the world for that. But understanding who people are, just because they're a certain age or income, marital status, number of kids, has nothing to do with who people are on the inside, right? So still need them. Demographics, leg number one, really important. Leg number two, psychographics, kind of a catch-all phrase for everything else. All the stuff we know about our customers, whether they've, clicked on a website or read an article, or they feel great, or they love your brand or hate your brand, or bought 3 things from you, or all that data we've been collecting for 20 years. Somebody sent a memo out about 20 years ago and said, data is the new oil. And everybody just started stockpiling data in the back room. And we've got tons and tons of it. But all that psychographics comes from exactly the same place, which is the past. Because if you can write it down, you can know it, it's happened. It's historical data, which helps you see some patterns maybe. But remember, we're all trying to get someone to do something next. And to understand how people make a decision, which is what we're all trying to do, is get someone to make a decision, you need to know what their values are, because here's the facts of life. People only make decisions in pursuit of their values. They will only do a thing if it's going to align with their values. So value graphics adds that third leg to the stool. You know what these folks are all about from a demographic perspective, what they've done so far psychographically, and value graphically, how to get them to do the thing you want them to do next. Looking forward, not looking backward.
Yeah, it's what drives them, right?
Yeah, it's what drives them. Values drive us. And here's a fun thing to think about. We all run around talking about values are amazing, values are great, or who's going to stand up and go, values are stupid. Like we all think values are amazing. But here's a biological fact. In our brains, there's a chunk of our brain called a prefrontal cortex. And it's the CEO of your life. It bosses you around. It tells you everything you're going to do and say and feel. You don't get a choice. This is just what it means to be human. Your prefrontal cortex controls things. And your prefrontal cortex uses one set of filters to figure out the answer to everything. And that's your values. So whether you like it or not, you are chasing your values all day, every day, 24/7, 365. It's just what being human is.
Before we dive into values, I have to share, like, I absolutely thought about you this week because I watched the movie Good Will Hunting, which is such an old movie, but to me, it's
great.
I'm a fan favorite. So yeah, I put it on there. I'm assuming that you've seen it before.
Oh yeah. Matt Damon, like, hello. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, our conversation about Matt Damon will have to be another podcast. But there was this one particular scene that kind of speaks to those three legs that you were just kind of talking about. And it was towards the beginning, and he was sitting with Robin Williams at the lake. And Robin Williams says to him, "Do you think that I have the slightest idea of what your experience is, because I read Oliver Twist, just because you're an orphan?" So I think when you're talking about those three legs, it is having like this full look at like the person so that you can truly connect and drive them to take that action if you're a marketer. But it made me think of that.
That's a great story. Yeah. Here's another way to think about it is demographics are like the card catalogs in the library. Remember, you used to go into an actual library and you'd go and say, okay, so I'm looking for the shelf of historical fiction. And so you go down onto the third floor and then the fourth aisle over to the right. And then you walk down and it's on your right-hand side, 3 shelves up. And there's this shelf of historical fiction. Demographics are saying that. Demographics are like, okay, great. We're going to talk to 18 to 24-year-old men who make $50,000 a year and have a blue-collar job. There's the shelf.
Yeah.
But every book on that shelf, just because they're historical fiction, you think they're all going to be the same? Of course not. They're entirely different from each other. They have one thing in common, which is that that's where they belong. That's the kind of categorization. But understanding what's inside those books, that's about values.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. So let's talk about values. We've said like it's that stuff that drives us, but what do we really mean when we're talking about values? And the reason I ask that is because I think values is one of these words kind of similar to authenticity. I just finished having a conversation about that, where people have like just kind of different definitions and reactions, honestly, to like the semantics of it. So when we talk about values, what's a value?
Well, there's 56 values in the world. There's 56 things that are important enough to enough people that'll get you. These are the building blocks for the operating system for who we are. It's the software for being human.
Yeah.
So these 56 values, let's talk about what some of them are. Personal growth is a value. People who are interested in personal growth, not interested, people who put a great deal of importance on the value of personal growth, they'll do anything for something that helps them feel like they're becoming a better version of themselves tomorrow than they are today. Now, we all know that person who, personal growth is a big value to me. And so I wear this Aura ring to track all my stuff. And I wear an Apple Watch because it helps me also, whatever this doesn't tell me, that tells me. And if I can find a product that's going to hack my brain chemistry and make me smarter this afternoon than I would normally be, I'm going to drink that thing. I'm out trying to do everything I possibly can, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, to become a better version of David. Personal growth, you can use that to sell me stuff. Family, incredibly important. Here's an interesting one in the United States of America. We're recording this podcast. I'm going to date it a little bit, but that's okay because it still makes a point. We're recording this on 2 days after the midterm election. We're still waiting to hear who's got the House, who's got the Senate. I'm Canadian, so I'm watching this from up here, and it's all just incredibly interesting and scary and frightening and all the same things you guys are going through because we're right next door. In the United States, the value of belonging is the most important value to the general population of the United States of America. The most important, after which comes family. Now think about this for a moment in that political context. How many stories have we heard about Uncle Bob and Aunt Sally not being invited to Thanksgiving this dinner because they belong to the wrong gang? They chose the red color or the blue color, and that's not who the rest of us are. So they're not welcome in my home anymore. My family comes after the belongingness that drives the life of the majority of Americans. That's pretty remarkable. We don't see that in other countries playing out that way. Other values are things like health and well-being, environmentalism, social standing, ambition, Personal growth, we talked about that one already. Relationships, community. There's 56 of these kinds of drivers. And depending on which ones you have in your particular makeup, it's going to determine what kind of person you are today, how you live your life, what kind of decisions you're going to make, and who you become next. This is the hardwiring for you as a human. And what we've been able to do with Valuegraphics is map that for everyone in the world. We've done 750,000 surveys now around the planet, and a team of translators with 152 languages that we've done this work. And we've collected enough data in a statistically representative way for enough countries, 180 countries, that we actually have built the world's first global record of what everybody on Earth, what their values are. And we can use that now to profile audiences for organizations and not-for-profits and companies that are interested in understanding how to talk to people on like a friend, how to get down into their hearts and talk to them about the stuff that's driving them, instead of, 18 to 24-year-old males who earn $50,000 a year, they must like rap. So let's get a rap star to be our spokesmodel and use that as a way to influence this group of people. God, those kinds of stereotypes, they just like, why are we continuing to think that anyone acts their age anymore? How many 50-year-olds do you know who act like 18-year-olds? And vice versa. I know a bunch of young people who act like they're 75.
And they're almost retired.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think when you say that, I'm a marketer and I do like to package things up and put them in like these buckets. And I think that values is something that shows that everybody has different layers. And as marketers, we kind of live by our audience, and then the buyer personas that we create for them. So tell me, does Valuegraphics fit into a buyer persona, or does Valuegraphics turn a buyer persona upside down?
Interesting. So we're actually working on a new product that's going to be, I know personas are one of those things in the marketing world where you love them or you hate them, right? There's a lot of controversy about whether they make any sense or not. So we're working on a product where, I don't know what we're going to call it yet, but it's basically Personas 2.0. I do think that a lot of the times we make those up inside an organization using the best of intentions to try and describe to non-marketers within the organization who our customers are. It's like, let's be honest, it's for the CEO, right? You go to the CEO and you go, okay, listen, you're going to go do the big speech. You need to know that we have some Bobs and some Janes and some Sams, and that's who our customers are. Got it? Okay, cool. That's why we have them, is to make it easy for other people to understand and get everybody on the same page. But they necessarily require us to do a lot of make-believe. And we look at a demographic set and we say, let's say women who are 50 plus years old, who make $100,000 a year in a white collar job, and they're married, but their kids have just about left home. Well, they must drive a Mercedes, and
I think
maybe they like chocolate, and so we fill up these things with stuff because we're trying to paint a little picture to make it easy for people to think about them, right? But what if you knew that particular segment that you're trying to describe in a persona, if you knew who they were deep inside their hearts, if you knew they were family-focused people with a ton of ambition, and that they were likely to make decisions in favor of anything that gave them some more of the social standing that they really seek. Well, now you'd be able to go, okay, so that person probably is driving a Mercedes because ambitious, social standing, and it's a Mercedes SUV because family, they still have a bunch of kids running around the back seats. So you could be painting a picture with more accurate information beyond the stereotypical stuff on the outside of that's what we tend to do. I have a funny story. Can I tell you another story? As you can tell.
Yes, please do.
Okay, so.
I'm here for the stories.
Okay, good. I got a ton. We're going to be here all day. So this is a story I like to call the mythical chocolate bar.
Okay.
So you're in a stadium. You're in the middle of a stadium. You're in the center. The stadium is packed to the rafters. It's full, standing room only. They oversold the seats. And everybody in that stadium is, let's go with the same thing. A woman who's 50 plus years old in a white collar job, mid to senior management, has a family, married, and 2 kids, earns at least $100,000 a year, if not more. That's a pretty good target audience description. So here's the mythical chocolate bar part. Your job to stand in that middle of the stadium is to sell them this chocolate bar, which is actually the remote control device for my slides. But we're pretending this is a chocolate bar. What's the thing you can say to get everyone in that stadium to say, wow, I want that chocolate bar? Well, let's see. They're women. Maybe it should be pink. They're educated, so maybe they like to read. So could there be a literary angle here? Maybe. So you're making stuff up. You're not sure, right? You're using stereotypes and intuition and guesswork. Now, let's say one more thing. We know one more thing. Let's say we knew that everybody in that stadium, every single person in there, all same demographic, but they all shared one value in common. And that was the value of, I don't know, community. What would you say now? This chocolate bar raises money for your community. Inside the chocolate bar, you open it up. The wrapper is basically a ticket that you mail back to us. It's got a stamp on it, and you write on there where you want the money donated. Or I guess today we would do this with an app. You do sign on with an app. There's a code in there, and it allows. We're going to make a 50-cent donation to some organization in your community in your name for every time you eat one of these chocolate bars. It's going to work across the board. They all have this common value of community. You don't have to guess and fall back on those stereotypes about women like pink and they like to read novels and they like to, you're not making stuff up anymore. You know what will move the needle. That's really how simple it is.
You're not shooting in the dark. I love that story. And I love that example because I think that it conceptualizes in a very digestible way what you're talking about when it comes to value graphics. So if I'm a marketer, which I am, but if I'm a marketer listening right now, I'm sold. I'm hooked. I'm sold. How do I actually do that though? Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, cause I'm like, yes, I'm sold, David. I want to know what's going to drive them. So then I, as a marketer, don't have to come up with like 50 different taglines for all of these different, like, I think that if they value, I don't know what the values are, but like, should I go a calorie angle? Should I have a hashtag in there? Should it be pink? Should I say it's, give health metrics behind like consuming chocolate? Like there are all of these things. So how, as a marketer, do I get that information?
Right. So the happy news is I've done the work for you. There's 3 ways that you can do this. The first way is you hire my company and pay us a lot of money and we'll do it for you. That's not for everybody.
Here's the plug, my friends. Here's the plug.
That's not for everybody. So there's 2 other ways you can do this too. So one way is it's kind of a mini plug. You can buy my book because in the book, there's a quiz. And that quiz is something that we worked really, really hard on. And we tested it with hundreds of people to make sure it was accurate. And you send this quiz out to whoever you want, however you want to do that. MailChimp, Quiz Monkey. I can't remember all the names of these different things you can use. So I made that one up. If somebody hasn't got a Quiz Monkey, you should. There should be a Quiz Monkey. And so you send this out. And you ask people these 10 questions. And my current book, the new book that comes out at the end of the month, has 15 questions in it. So it's a little bit more accurate, a little bit broader scope. And you get the responses and the answer keys in the book as well. And then it will point you to one of the chapters in the book that's all about an archetype in the database that closely matches the people that you've just surveyed. So for the cost of a book, which is, I don't know what they're at, $15, $14, whatever they are. You can get this quiz. You got to do the work. You got to send out the survey and tabulate the results. But then in each of those chapters, I've tried to put in as much possible information as I can. Here's the big disclaimer, though. It's like playing the piano with your fists, right? The database, these 750,000 surveys that we've done around the world, this database contains potentially hundreds of thousands of different profiles for different groups of people. We took them and looked at them all and said, okay, if we were forced to, we could put them into a couple of big archetypes. There's 10 for North America, 15 for the world. So what you're getting from this quiz is one of 15 enormous clusters that's most like your target audience. Your target audience will be in that cluster, in that archetype somewhere. It's going to be a pretty big archetype just because it's a book. There's no other way to do this, right?
Yeah.
But it's great. You're playing the Valuegraphics piano, but you're playing it with your fists. That's fine, but you're not playing that broken demographic guitar that someone left over in the corner last year with the no strings on it, because that just doesn't work. So on the right instrument. The third way is absolutely free. Don't even have to buy a book. And it's 3 questions that we, again, have tested over and over and over again. If you use these 3 questions, they're actually fun cocktail party questions too. If you're looking to just sort of understand the people that are around you, we call them the 3 telltale questions. If you ask these questions, you listen for hints and patterns in the noise, and that's people telling you what their values are. So question number 1, why do you go to work? Why do you go to work? People will start to say things about, well, it's, you got to pay the bills and feed my family, or it's where I get my creative juices flow, or I love working. I want to get the promotion and be in the, so they're going to tell you stuff that's going to be reflective of their drivers, the motivation behind this thing we do for a third of our life. The other question, the second question, is why would you give away half of your lottery winnings? Now, this one you have to probe a little further sometimes. People will be like, oh,
this one I have a knee jerk because you've given me these questions before. I'm like, wait, why would I? Did I have the winning lottery ticket? So many follow-up questions to it.
You got that $2 billion power lotto ticket hiding in your pot.
Yeah, I know. I was like, why would I give it? That's a good question, David.
So why would you give half of it away? People will want to tell you who they're going to give it to first, but you got to get past that and down to why would you give it away? And then my favorite one, and this is the best one, when your friends have had 2 martinis, you ask them this and you really start to understand your friends. The question is, you get to write a letter to yourself from 10 years ago. Like, send a note to your 10 years ago self. What would you say and why? You listen to the responses from that one and you're like, wow, I had no idea you were that kind of a person. And you can start to really understand what the motivations are for the biggest things that people do in their life. Once you start doing this and looking at people this way, you can't unsee it. And that's what's kind of cool about this. Now that we've had this chat about values and being values driven and about valuegraphic data, you're never going to be able to look at people the same way again. You're going to look at the next target audience description that comes your way and go, I'm doubting that this is very useful because there's nothing in here except demographics and past behavior. Is that all we got? It's kind of a blessing and a curse all at the same time.
Well, and I think, I feel like you have to read your book so that when people give you those answers, you can kind of put them in context. Honestly, I was going to say buckets, but you can put them in context in general. And I've marinated over those questions as well, too, because you gave them to me beforehand. And I think that they're so incredibly insightful, and you can use them like in your personal life as well, too. But they would add so much value in just kind of understanding your audience. And I think as a marketer, the way that I would almost leverage it too is almost using that as my guide for what it is that I'm testing. So if I don't have all of the information, right? If I don't have you on my side where I'm like, hey, really break down all the values of like my audience, if I can at the very least start to ask them those types of questions, then maybe I have an idea of what I'm A/B testing. It takes that list of 50 different taglines to maybe 10.
Yeah.
And when do you want to test them, right? And,
because here's the thing. We ask people questions all the time. I mean, any good marketer is always out asking questions and doing surveys, right? And what do we ask? We say, tell me how old you are. Are you married? Do you have kids? What's your gender? How much money do you make? It's like, okay, what are you going to do with that? you're going to make the pink chocolate bar. It's not really useful.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be helpful from a media buying perspective. And then we ask questions like, do you love my product? Do you hate my product? How much do you love my product? Do you love it so much that you would tell your friends about it? How do you think about it when I say it this way? How do you think about it? Like all about us, right?
Yeah.
What we never do is ask them about them. What's on your mind, my friend? What worries you so much that it's the last thing you think about before you go to bed at night? And what makes you thrilled and joyful when you hear about it during the course of your day? We don't ask that stuff. And that's what being human is. And as far as I'm concerned, marketing is all about connecting to humans. We're not connecting to demographics. We're connecting to humans. And if you don't have human-centric data, then are you really being the best marketer you can be?
How would you categorize the answers? Not categorize. I'm trying to think from, now I'm trying to put it in a data bucket, right? Because to me, I also hear it as quantitative and qualitative, right? And the qualitative is, I'm like, all right, but I have to boil this down to something that I can understand. Because let's say I ask that question to 1,000 customers and I get 1,000 responses. How can I really disseminate all of that information? I cannot feasibly create like
1,000 campaigns.
Archetype. Exactly. I can't create 1,000 campaigns. I mean, that would be amazing. That's, account-based marketing at its best and its finest. But like, how do you quantify the qualitative? Like, are you tagging that information? Like what? Like how? Yeah.
So if we can talk about it in a couple different ways. I mean, those 750,000 surveys we've done around the world in 150 languages, we measured 436 different questions, responses to 436, of which 56 are the core values. So amazing, huge amount of data, right? Same problem. What do we do? How do we get our heads around this? So
it's overwhelming.
It is. So it's the Halloween candy method. So you take these pillowcases of candy, you dump them on the dining room table when the kids come home, and you look at them and you go, oh, there's a bunch of stuff here that's chocolate, and there's a bunch of stuff that's bubble gum. You don't go in with a preconceived notion. You let the data tell you how it wants to be sorted. That's what we did with our 750,000 surveys. That's how we got to 56 values. We didn't know there were 56 values. We went in and went, what does the candy say? And the candy said there's 56 buckets to put the candy in. Now, within each bucket, the chocolate bucket, for example, there's a bunch of different kinds of chocolate in there. So if you take our 56 values, they actually break out into more than 8,000 different codes for the kinds of chocolate, the kinds of bubble gum. That's too much to talk to people about, though. There's 56 buckets of candy. Now, if you're doing this for your 1,000 people who respond to your survey, do the same thing. Take all the data, pour it out on the dining room table and say, all right, what's it telling me? It says there's a group of these ones here. They're all talking about this. And these ones over here are all talking about that. These ones, I think these feel more like, well, maybe they're their own category. So you kind of just let the data do the talking.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And it is a way to break it down. Don't try to categorize every single response into like, oh, it has to fit into this. So what I'm hearing you say is start broad and then start to narrow that down within those broad kind of buckets or groups that you're finding. I also love the analogy of candy because that really resonates.
Because candy.
Because it's candy. I know now this is the second candy analogy as well, too. And food is love for me. And that's a value right there. I could truly talk to you forever, but we're down to the prediction time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you see changing in marketing over just kind of the next year, especially with your new book and more conversation about values. Well,
the entire planet will read my book. That's probably not going to.
Yes, basically.
But here's what I really think is going to happen. What I'm watching really closely is what's happening with the availability of data. You know, we have these DRP issues that are rising now and Apple locking down on what data is available. So anybody who's in a performance marketing kind of role, just as one example, who's used to buying data, stuffing it in the top of the funnel, and then buying more data and stuff it in the top of the funnel, those days are over. Now, if they're not over now, they're over in the next 20 minutes. And so instead of relying on these unstable sources of data that don't give us accurate pictures of people, I think that the shift will happen to finding better ways for us to understand the people that we want to engage and motivate and influence. And that's going to have to be about what's on the inside, not what's on the outside. Because our psychographic data changes on a whim. You might be we get these surveys that are like, the brand emotion surveys. Nike is the #1 most popular brand in the United States of America until it's not, which could be tomorrow if something terrible happens with the Nike brand, right? It just changes. I bought pairs of shoes yesterday on Amazon, and so they think that I'm going to keep buying pairs of shoes, but I bought those. I don't want to see any more ads.
I did it already.
I already bought that. So psychographic data has its limitations, and demographics, you're going to wake up tomorrow and be a day older and maybe get a promotion and make twice as much money and maybe have more kids, less kids, get divorced, find a new, who knows what's going to happen to you? You're shifting all the time. So demographics and psychographics are constantly changing, and they're becoming less and less available. You know what never changes, ever? Our values. Values are like diamonds. They're forever. They don't change. You get them in your childhood, they're yours for the rest of your life. So if you know the values of the people who are attracted to your product, your service, your brand, your message, you know how to talk to them and engage with them deep inside their hearts. And that's not going to change ever. So this is solid, stable, unchanging insights. And I think we're going to find that the world starts to move in this direction. Listen, look around the world right now. What is not about our values? ESG, DEI, return to work, quiet quitting, great resignation, political divisiveness, people, Twitter storms of hate against people who do things, companies that do things that are trying to be like, they're greenwashing, they're pinkwashing, they're black, companies that do things based on truly being a values-driven company, Patagonia giving itself away to the planet. It's all about our values. In fact, I think we've left the experience economy and the sharing economy behind, and now we're in the values economy. And I believe that this is, from the depths of my heart, I believe that this is where we're going to go. And I think it's a much better way for the world to proceed. If I can end on a really sad, happy, glad, inspirational note, it's this. Demographics don't work for us anymore. Nobody acts their age anymore. It's not a useful way to think about people. And in fact, in this global data base that we've built, we can see that people within any demographic cohort are only about 10.5% similar. So a demographically defined target audience, if they're only 10.5% similar to each other, then that means they're only 10.5% targetable. And it's why we get excited about a 5% return on a direct marketing campaign, a direct email campaign. So demographics don't work, but they're causing all kinds of other problems in the world. And by continuing to say to each other innocently in our boardrooms that it's okay to think about people based on their age. That's how we think about people. Age. Well, that's ageism. And continuing to think about people based on their skin color. Like, we've got our Hispanic customers and that's racism. And thinking about people based on who they love. Well, we have a big gay contingent of people within our targets. That's nothing more than homophobia. So we have all of these problems, sexism, gender. We're supposed to think about people based on whether they're male or female and how old they are, how much money they make, what color their skin is. That's just giving all of us permission to continue to look at each other this way. And that's just perpetuating all of these terrible social problems that we're all coping with and not doing it very well, frankly, and trying to figure out a better way to move forward. So if we just do this one simple thing, which is to change the way we look at each other, things will be better at work. We'll do better for ourselves. We'll understand ourselves better and get better results. And we can help make the world a little bit better too. And that sounds really Pollyanna. Sounds really, everybody thinks they're going to change the world. But if we all just change the way we look at each other, I guarantee you the world will change for the better.
change happens incrementally. I don't know that I could have said it better myself. I obviously couldn't have. And that's a great way to just kind of wrap it up. I have a million other things that I could have said, but I'm so glad that you ended with that. David, thank you so much for coming on here and just sharing your thoughts and ending it with a bang. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here, and go out there and make the world a better place. Be values driven.
Love it.